SolidWorks. In this one we're going to be covering general and fundamental stuff. And my name is Quentin Rock. I'll be the host for this webcast. If I flip to my first slide here. The reason I asked that poll is SolidWorks 2011 is out. It's been released on October 18th of this year, so a little over a month now. Service Pack 1 is already in what's called the early visibility phase, which is sort of the beta phase or the pre-release phase of it. So should be out pretty soon with Service Pack 1. That was on the 15th of actually November that was released, and typically it's within a couple weeks that they release Service Pack 1. So it should be out pretty shortly if that's one of the things you commonly wait for. And that kind of goes to my next bullet point here, is when to update. Typically, one of the major things people do is they're a little frightened at first, so they'll wait for a service pack. So if you're waiting for Service Pack 1, I'd keep checking back daily because there's a good chance it'll be out in the next week or so. Of course, they don't give us any exact dates. And one of the things we really want to do, and what I want to start out with here in this webcast, is some of the general fundamentals, some of the admin type stuff, before we get into some of the SolidWorks, new features. And that is, when to update. Do I do a clean update or an install? A clean, uninstall 2010 or 2009 or whatever version you have and just install 2011, very clean way to do it, or just pop in the disk or download and do update. We get that question every year, and it's kind of different every year, but the truth of it is, how long ago, when was the last time you cleaned out SolidWorks? So if you're having any problems and you're thinking 2011 maybe is going to solve them, if it's a software issue, that's one thing. If it's a stability or one of those types of issues, or just file locations are all messed up, that kind of stuff, it might be a good idea to clean it all up at this point in time. The update basically in the background uninstalls the old version, tries to keep all your settings and install the new version. So it is still a very clean way to do it. But if you've updated from 08 to 09 to 2010 to 2011 now, it might be another time to do a clean uninstall. Either way, either one of those methods will work very well. So I've done both several times already since it's been available. Testing is also a major thing that we always recommend. The version is different every time, and that's the biggest reason there is no backwards compatibility is because the code changes. Just because your video driver or these settings were good in 2010 doesn't mean that you may have to adjust those again or update a new driver in 2011. And you want to kind of know about that, especially if you're a site that has multiple users and you have a lot of different hardware in there or some older hardware. You definitely want to go through and possibly put it side by side as a new install rather than an upgrade, and test it out on that hardware. Test and see if you're going to have drivers. Test and see if you need to do that. So that's another important thing to consider. And of course, deadlines. If you've got something, here it is today on a Wednesday, and you have a deadline on tomorrow or at the end of the day or something, it's probably not a good idea to update. Get what you need done and move along. And of course, if you work with outside vendors or other offices or other divisions in your company, you want to make sure that they're going to be able to open your files. And if you're open and save something in 2011, it's not backwards compatible. So it's not going to be something that they can open. So you're going to want to make sure you have everybody up to speed at the same time. And you'll probably find that a lot of your vendors or other people are using 2010 because they're waiting for you and you're waiting for them. So you may also, I see that very common in the tech support department and when I go on site and stuff, that everybody's waiting for each other. So you might talk to each other as well and see what their plan is, and see if maybe the reason you're waiting for 2011 is because you think that they're waiting for it. So PDM systems is another thing to consider. I mean, it's probably very widely used. Maybe 10 years ago we weren't using them as much. We were using Workgroup PDM. But all those things also need to be updated to the newest version along with it to be able to use it. Enterprise is kind of a unique tool because you can actually install and update Enterprise to 2011 today and still leave your SolidWorks at an older version, as you can see by my footnote there. that 2011 it will support up to 2 versions, but it doesn't go the other way. And I don't really see this being a common scenario where you would do something like this and not update your PDM or anything at the same time. But it is something that is an interesting note. Workgroup PDM, you will still have to update at the same time as SolidWorks to be able to use it. So another thing on the list here, XP and 32-bit, we still get questions on that. And yes, there was actually an announcement that there wouldn't be any support a while back. If you went to the system requirements, which I'm going to flip over to here in a second, one of them was that XP was not going to be supported in 2011, and that actually has changed. They do support it now, and it will be supported for both the 32 and the 64-bit. So you don't have to go out and buy a new machine today just to run 2011 if you have that, or buy an updated operating system or something. But it is, Microsoft has retired it. It is getting older. If there's any bugs or anything we find that's not in Vista and not in Windows 7, it's just an XP specific thing, SolidWorks isn't going to be able to address those. So just something to consider. Microsoft isn't addressing them, so SolidWorks has no way to be able to do that either. Let's jump over to web page here. And what I've done is I've already logged into the subscription service customer portal on the SolidWorks web page. You can go to solidworks.com, hit login, and get in there. But there's some, even without logging in here, there's some customer resources. You can see some things, system requirements, and I'll just jump over to that just to kind of take a look at a couple things here. And this is again more for some of you admins or some of you purchasing people, but you can see that what versions are supported in which operating systems, what the minimum amount of RAM is to run it. Notice here, this is a very interesting thing that's changed since 2010. It actually changed a while back, but after 2010 was released, that they've updated this to recommend more RAM. And 6 gigs is a lot of RAM for somebody just making a small parts or something like that, but it's kind of the recommended baseline package. Now, I want you guys to be real careful here that this isn't saying go buy this right now. This is just saying that if you were going to buy a new one, I would at least get these minimum specs or these recommended specs. If everything is running fine, don't go spend a bunch of money that you don't need to. And that's another thing with hardware as well. And you can see some of the other specs. And then over here on the left, that's the SolidWorks specs, but there's some for servers for the PDM systems as well. And graphics cards is always one of the biggest things because SolidWorks is so graphic intense. These graphics cards are the big thing. So in my case, I'll pick my Dell, and this is actually the laptop I'm using today, and the card model that I'm using. And you can see you kind of go through the list here. You pick what you want, you check that, and they put different versions on here. So this is another one of those things I was talking about where you may be running multiple versions. Notice I only have one as I narrow it down that's a supported driver for this, and it's a fairly new laptop, and that's probably why as a few more months or something, as more drivers come out, I'm sure there'll be more. Again, if you don't see your card on this, there's a little note here, why is it not there? It could be older, or maybe you go to this list and you notice that the highest one on the list is 2009 or 2010. It's an older card. They're not going to continue to test that card each time, and eventually, it's some of the things or some of the high-level real view stuff may not be supported in there. You see there's a support, if I go down to the key here, supports some real view, supports pre-2008 real view, supports all real view. So there's some significant indicators here where you may or may not have a card. Now it doesn't mean the card is to throw away or go buy a new card and throw it in your 5-year-old system. That's definitely an important thing to realize, is that just buying a new card may not be enough if your computer is still is 5 years old as well. So but anyway, that's why we recommend some testing. Alright, so a couple things before I get too far into it. I want to talk about some of the administration guides, the what's new sources for you. Now the administration guides are in that customer portal, so I've already logged into my support portal, here. There's admin guides. Some of these are available without logging in. We can go here. You can see here's the release notes. There's a what's new guide. Some of this is also available inside of SolidWorks. Here's the installation and admin guide. Remember, this isn't just for you. This is for everybody. So if you know, some of these products you might not have or you might not care about. Some of the setups, you may not be on a network or you may be a standalone. You know, those types of things. But all the guides are here. You know, take a look at them. Hand them to your IT person if they're going to do the updating. Oops, let me refresh here. And you can see that. And while I'm in here, some other good sources of what's new stuff is, you know, in our forums, our community forums. If you've never been in there, there's a lot of people, and it's actually a pretty good forum. I've gone to a lot of, you know, tech forums and stuff over the years, and some of them just turn into big arguments. And in this place, most everybody's helpful, and a lot of SolidWorks people are in there. So if you have subscription service and you have a valid, you know, 2011 up-to-date license, then you're able to get into the forums. Here's where your downloads are as well, where you can get in and download the latest version. And something interesting that I like to point out that I'm surprised that people don't know is this is actually, well, 0 here. You can see the early visibility, but the 01 here is actually will allow you to do some of those manual downloads for some of you who've been using SolidWorks for many, many years. But you can actually download the entire version of SolidWorks. That's something that most people don't know. Is there's a download only option once the installation manager actually launches up on your system. You'll download that, it'll launch up, and then it'll download all the rest of the stuff it needs. If you choose the download only option, that's exactly like the disc or the DVD that you would get. The only difference is it's not on a DVD, obviously it's on a folder on your hard drive, and you know, it doesn't have a built-in auto run. So if you burn it to a disk and pop it in your drive, you have to run setup.exe off of it. But it is exactly the same as what you're going to get on a disk. It's distributable. It's, you know, no difference. So SolidWorks doesn't release a disk every time there's a service pack. So you can always get the full download or the full disk every time. So if you're one of those guys who likes to log or have that stuff available, choose that download only option and then install it. And all this stuff is generic, so it can be shared across your network. You know, you can put it in a network location. So that's how you get to download. Some of the other community stuff on our website too. This is Digital Dimensions, ddicad.com. I'm sure you guys will go to that every day. You know, here's where you'll get your webcast archives. We post those shortly after we do the webcast. You can see there's a bunch on the list. It only shows probably the first 5 or so in there, but we have these categories on the right and we have keyword searches, so you can go ahead and find any type of, you know, topics or something specific. You'll see very shortly there'll be a 2011 What's New category when we archive this webcast on there. But I definitely want you to point that out. The other thing is the podcast. We've been doing this a long time. Lou Gallo is really big in the community as well of SolidWorks. So just to be able to listen to some of this stuff, burn it to a disk, listen in iTunes on your iPod, you can go to the SolidWorks Herd site and get a lot more. This is kind of the link to it where it's reading from. But you know, I definitely recommend. There's a huge SolidWorks community out there with a lot of great information, a lot of good bloggers out there. So you might want to start, you know, following some of those guys too. And that will be another great source to hear about the what's new and how people are actually using the features. All right. Now let's get into some of the what's new stuff in there and some of the improvements. Converting files to 2011. The task scheduler does this. If you go to Start menu, you can run the task scheduler and convert them. Do you need to convert them? No. SolidWorks will open all the files, even if they're older versions, in 2011. It's just a little bit slower because the first time it opens it, it's got to convert it. So there is a conversion tool like there is in every other version of SolidWorks prior to 2011 that will allow you to update your files to the latest version, you know, and schedule it for midnight or something like that. And it will go into your vaults if you have a PDM system and update those as well. So just something to keep in mind. Might save you a little bit of time on opening or the first save, but it isn't something that necessarily you have to do. SolidWorks will still open the files. So, installation improvements. If you're running, let's jump into SolidWorks here. If you're running a standalone SolidWorks, and you choose transfer licenses now, so if you're going to get a new system or you're just going to uninstall and reinstall, you'll see that you can actually select all and transfer them all at once. So kind of a nice thing. You used to have to transfer Flow and then Simulation and then SolidWorks, or you may have some different licenses in there. This is again for standalone, not network-based people, but you can transfer that and use this transfer. It's a good idea anytime you're going to install to transfer first. If you're going to decommission your computer, you get a new one, you have to transfer these licenses over if you're on a standalone first. But just streamlined it a little bit for you here. And I'll cancel out of that. The other thing for those of you who create administrative images and run that, and there's a whole guide on that in that support guides thing. I'd check that out if you have no idea what that is. Don't just start using it because you saw the checkbox. It's definitely something that needs to be managed. But at a larger company, people will do that. You can now create 32-bit images on 32-bit image and 64-bit images on both 32 and 64-bit machines. Prior to 2011, you had to be on a 32-bit machine to create a 32-bit image and a 64-bit machine to create a 64-bit image. So now it doesn't matter. You can pick whichever. You can run the installation manager for either one. You obviously can't install the software, but you can create the images on either one. The SolidWorks borrow feature. So those of you on a network license where you go and you actually borrow a license, that's been enhanced quite a bit. And let's jump over to this slide here. I've got a sort of a preview of what it looks like. But basically you can see the license borrow tab, and this is what borrow is. If you don't know what it is, it's for network license users. You may not even know this if you're a network license, but let's say you've got a laptop and you want to go home with it, or you need to travel to another state or country or city. You can borrow your network license on your laptop and then travel, come back, return the license, or after a certain amount of time it will just expire. In prior versions you had a list of every single type of license on there that you can borrow. Now it only shows the ones that you have. You can see this is our network server here at Digital Dimensions, but it's only showing the ones that we have on our server. It's not showing every single type of license even though we don't have them. So it kind of streamlines the list for you. It also looks a little bit different. You can see a borrow and return where you can kind of click this button to add it over here and return it a lot easier. So just a cleaner interface to that in here. And keep in mind, if you have any questions, you can always type those in the questions box here. I'll try and keep an eye on that as I go. I have this prior slide here as we're talking about installation. I just want to warn everybody that PDMWorks Workgroup, PDM, the Vault admin tool, is always turned off by default. So if you are a Vault admin and you're installing yours, just remember to do that. It's always kind of a little bit of an annoyance to have to go back and modify and add it. And we get a lot of calls every year on that because by default it's not installed. So you expand out, when you get to this screen during the installation manager, you expand it out and make sure you check that. You don't have to if you're not an admin, but by default it is turned off. Let's see, where am I? The SolidWorks RX tool. For those of you who haven't used this or haven't used it in a while, probably something to go ahead and take a look at again. I should show where that's actually at. Start SolidWorks 2011, SolidWorks tools. You'll see the SolidWorks RX tool, and there's a lot of other tools here. You'll notice stuff like routing, and we're going to be doing a what's new routing thing, so you'll see some of that in there. There's that license manager where we can look at the borrow and all that other stuff. So, and our task schedule where we can convert files. I'm going to launch up this RX tool, or I already did here. And just to look, the interface to this has changed a little bit. It's streamlined a little bit. The problem capture stuff is a little, you can describe problems. You can do some of this stuff before you actually record the videos. So the workflow of it's a little bit different. The diagnostic area here is a little bit different. It always has a few more checks or gives you a few more information, or just that it's updated for 2011 stuff. The driver doesn't match. It has a link to get to that page. If you're offline or something, it may not be able to do that, or if it's an older video card, it may not, give you a green check. You might have to do some research on your own. But those are, you can see some of the stuff in here. There's a troubleshoot tab where it gives you some common things, and it's actually, if you look here, it's going to jump over to the knowledge base if I click on any, so I'll stay off of that. It tells you that you need access to it in there. And just other things in there, some system maintenance, some logs and stuff in there that you can clean out. If you're not sure on any of this stuff, don't hit the button and hit start maintenance. Please check with your IT personnel and find out if they're okay with this, because they may be doing something else with your profile or your hardware or their network stuff that they don't want you to do this. So don't, just because it's a button in here, don't click it without checking if you're not sure what it does. There's this add-in thing, and it's kind of interesting. It says, that there's going to be more add-ins, or the ability to have add-ins to the RX. I haven't seen much on this. I tried to do a little research to see what kind of add-ins are actually there. The only one is the one that comes by default right now, this performance benchmark test. If you click that link, it doesn't do anything. It takes you to a forum page that doesn't have any add-ins or anything in there. Just kind of explains the RX tool. So eventually, I think we may be seeing some cool stuff pop in there, but or the ability to download some more add-ins. It looks like that's what they're setting up, but I haven't seen any information on that yet. So I would just I would just check back again or check that website in a while. The other one is benchmarks. Now, this is something that I think everybody's wanted for a long time, is some type of benchmarks. And I gotta say, it's a good first step, but it's not exactly what you might think it is. When I click that link, it takes me to the solidworks.com/benchmarks page, and you see there's a passmark performance test, SolidMuse spec, some of these other different tests and things that kind of do give you some sort of an indication of what's going on, and allows you to compare your computer to other computers. The Passmark one, the first one on the list, this is actually sort of a third party. None of these are SolidWorks tests. They're not done by SolidWorks. You're not going to get any information or any support from SolidWorks if you can't download it or can't run it. It's just links to common things outside third party stuff. Passmark is one that's actually been used a long time for hardware. It's not necessarily anything to do with SolidWorks specific. If you go to hardware websites and you want to know like CPU versus CPU, that kind of stuff, this is one of the tests that's over the years become a pretty common or a pretty general test that people use to judge hardware. One that is a little bit more specific is the second one, Anna's SolidMuse, where she actually, and it's funny because I think SolidWorks adopted either some of her parts or made their own variants of some of her parts. She's a big in the SolidWorks community. She's a blogger. I would say more than anything in SolidWorks, she's probably one of the top hardware people I know out there. She's just really into hardware and is a very heavy SolidWorks user. So very good site to check out. But if you go to her site and you'll see, and I'll just go to it. Hopefully she doesn't mind me linking to it here. But you can see here's the benchmark tests in there that she has, and basically you download the file, you do rebuilds, you do some things, and it tells you all the steps to do, and then you can post your scores and get a list of, it's community driven on our system, but you can see that where your computer stands up to it, and she's got a whole spreadsheet and everything you can look at. So definitely something I would consider taking a look at or doing it for if you're wondering where your system stands or what people are using out there, what's the highest I can get, how much more one computer over the other is, because they're using a standard part. The real reason SolidWorks can't do benchmarking other than a pass-fail type thing is because you create different files than the next company down the road. Everybody uses it differently. Every user has different shortcuts and keyboards and different hardware and different everything else. So there's really no way that two users are going to sit down in two different industries and use the software the same. And even in the same industry or the same office, there may be two users who learned at different paces or use different tools to create their stuff. It's just too hard to, day in, day out do that. So there's no way to just say that this one thing is going to be better for this one user. It depends on which features you use in SolidWorks. Even can get that deep into it. But that's why the graphics cards are pass-fail, that type of stuff. It's what's supported, what's the minimum requirements. That's what SolidWorks can offer. But if you want to compare yours and use the same parts, these are some great places. The last thing I want to show you is this performance tool. This performance test you can actually run here, and I'll click on it. It takes me to the add-ins tab of the RX anyway. And if I hit start benchmark, I'm not going to run this because it can take up to 30 minutes depending on your configuration. I think I'll show you mine took over 5 minutes or so to run. But basically it opens this stuff, it runs it 4 or 5 times in a row, and then it lets you, it gives you the ability, it gives you a score based in seconds, and the lower the seconds, obviously probably the better the system. It's brand new with 2011, so you can run this test, you can submit your results and view them online. I'll cancel out of this. Unfortunately, and I've after you submit your results, it'll take you can go to share and view your results. I cannot figure out a way to get to this website. I think the linking to it is kind of hard to find on there. So I put it in the slide, and I'll show you in a second here where it is, and you can always call us in support and we can help you find it. But there's the link to it. And it actually creates these log files. So it's going to open a part, basically rebuild it, make a drawing, do some other things. If you have PhotoView 360, it's going to run that, do some rendering stuff, and give you results based in seconds. And if I go back over to here, you can see the overall time, how many, how long the CPU test, the graphics test, all these things, and you see the data transfer rates based in seconds. I can't, there's not a big guide for this. I don't know exactly what it's looking at or exactly how you determine it. And I think there's some anomalies in here. If you look, there's some computers that are a little older than others that are a little bit higher scoring. So that could mean maybe your system isn't good, or maybe there's other things running. They recommend you reboot before you do this so nothing else is going on at the same time so you can get your overall score. You might want to run it a few different times to see what's best. It's only for 2011. Even if you did it in beta, they wiped out all the beta scores, and now it's starting from SP0 forward. You can see what people are using, an overall score. You can sort these columns. In my case, I'm working off of a laptop right now. I can sort by laptops. I can say the overall score, sort by the overall score, ascending or descending. Again, the lower the score, it's in seconds, so the better. And there I am actually. You can see mine. There's my test right there on my laptop. A little cryptic though. If you look at I can hit the plus sign there. You kind of have to copy and paste this stuff into there to find out which model CPU. It doesn't just say Core i7, whatever number, or Core 2 Duo. So hopefully they improve some of that stuff in the future. But another good indication, we're using a baseline set of parts, so we're all doing the same thing across the board. So definitely something interesting that SolidWorks is doing in 2011 here. If you're interested in where it puts those log files in case you want to read through them and find out more information, you don't want to submit your score, you can get it there as well. All right. It seems to be taking a while here. SolidWorks Background Downloader. This is something new, and I think it's going to be, for some of you, a big annoyance, and for some of you, a really nice feature, and for some of you, just kind of middle of the road. But what it is now in 2011, by default, this is installed, the SolidWorks Background Downloader. Now you can, by default, it's also turned on, which is something I really want to point out, and this is during the Installation Manager setup. You'll see that summary screen, and you'll see the background downloader or the download options here. Hit the plus sign here, and you can see I already have it as a minus sign in the screenshot, or hit change and say do not use, or turn it off if you want. So you can't not install it, but you can turn it off. If you forget, it'll show up in the system tray. So let's go down in here. I have it turned off right now. If I forget, or I turn it off and I want to turn it back on, Where is it here? Oops. It's actually in a different section. It's kind of weird. There's SolidWorks 2011. It'll show up under Installation Manager for some reason. And this is Windows 7, so if you're using a different OS, it may look a little different for you. The SolidWorks Background Downloader. See, now it's turned on and it's sitting here and enabled. So if I accidentally do install it or forget, no big deal. Whoops. Let me go back here. Find the icon. I can right-click on the icon and just choose to disable it again. But basically, yes, I want to disable it. The only way to turn it back on is to go back to it. So basically, I just wanted to show you that. If you see that icon in there, and what this is actually going to do, and there's options to pause and restart and check and all that stuff, so you can kind of turn it off. It's not supposed to be running while you're using your system, so it's kind of like a screensaver thing. It would start downloading when you need it. It's every time there's a new service pack or a new version out, it'll automatically download that, and once it's done downloaded, it'll pop up, a little tooltip type thing saying, hey, we've downloaded a new version, would you like to install it now? Kind of similar to how Windows updates do if you have automatic updates turned on. So just something to keep in mind. Remember though, some of these downloads are rather large, right? Some of these service packs can be a gigabyte or two. So if you're doing that, you might suck up some bandwidth that you may want to be using. These days this day and age, it's not that big of a deal with bandwidth, but something to keep in mind. If you do install it, it's very easy to shut off. Just right-click on the icon, disable it. It'll stay off until you turn it back on again. So, but during the installation, you can turn it off. All right. Anybody want to see some SolidWorks here? So, yeah, we'll go ahead and jump into some user interface stuff here. Let me jump back over into SolidWorks. And first thing on the user interface is this search button that used to be up here. And if you had an older version of Windows, you may not have had the search installed. In Vista and Windows 7, it's a default thing to have the Windows search. But you'll notice it says Search Knowledge Base at the top right there now. It's not just to search files or folders. It's actually several different choices in here now. If I hit the pull down next to it, you can see I can do SolidWorks Help. I can do Knowledge Base, I can do the forums, or back to the bottom one, which was the default in all prior versions, Files and Models, where it would actually search whatever your search results were. I kind of like this better because I never really used the file search one that much. Anything I use, I basically have a PDM system that's very good and very easy to search, enterprise PDM. So didn't need this search functionality in SolidWorks. So I can do the knowledge base. Now, if you're not on subscription support, when you click, yeah, I want to search knowledge base, and let's just say, oh, looks like I typed in import just recently. I'll type it in again. It's going to ask you to log into the customer portal. So you have to have active subscription service to get to that. The help is another one that's really nice. I can hit that, and always have it search the help without having to open the help up. And remember, this help's been improved quite a bit in the last version of it, where it's actually an online help. It's actually, you notice http help.solidworks.com in the address bar. Now, if you're not online, it still has a local help, but it's the online one's nice because any updates to help is getting done immediately, so you're not waiting until the next service pack to get the updated help files. So you probably don't even notice it's in the background that way, but a nice enhancement there. There's some new buttons you can add. You can add the file save as and properties to this standard toolbar here. Remember, since it's been a while since you probably had to adjust toolbars, you can go to Tools, Customize, and go to the toolbar command. In this case, I was talking about the standard toolbar, which is this one. These save as buttons, these copy buttons, actually no, save as and file properties, I think, which is this one here, are now buttons on there, a couple new buttons in there, and they always add a few of those along the line. And some of the other sections, you'll see there's some new buttons when we get to some of the other what's new features in SolidWorks in our other webcasts. Let's see, property manager icons. So the property manager here, some of these icons look have been updated as well for greater consistency, so they match the toolbar and the feature manager icon. Sometimes they look different in there. everything looks, you know, a little bit more streamlined in there. Some of the error reporting too, I think this is another one of those things that's turned off, this performance feedback stuff, or if you crash and an error message pops up, there's more options in that error message than when you submit to SolidWorks. And you may think submitting to SolidWorks is useless because I never hear anything back from them, but they do spend a lot of time going through these logs when they make the new versions. So it doesn't hurt to hit that submit button. I would go ahead and do that every time and let them, you know about it. You can also put in there whether there's some questions in there and some descriptions. Of course, I can't crash SolidWorks right now, and none of you probably ever crash SolidWorks, but if you ever do, on that rare occasion, you might find that you can put more stuff in that performance feedback now. When it sends it, you can actually put in some of your own comments in there. Alright, model display. And this is probably the biggest thing that's changed as far as user interface type stuff, is this model display stuff. Basically, everything almost in this whole slide pretty much has to do with what's called the display manager now. So there's a feature manager, property manager, display manager, and a lot more, right? And if I jump in here, and I kind of just have a part with a lot of different bodies and some faces and stuff in here for you guys all to see what, you know, how the workflow sort of works. Now, I am not much of an artist, so you know, and I'm not much of a photographer either. The way I like to shoot pictures is I take a lot of them and hope one of them comes out very well. That's what digital cameras are great. I'll pick, you know, a specific color here. In this case, I'll pick a material called copper, and you can see I get this copper finish to the parts. You know, of course, that all has to do with real view. You know, the shadows and everything in there. You have your scenes and everything. You know, most of this is in there. You might notice a couple more that weren't in there last time, but for the most part, it's in there. If you guys like pitch black, you know, that's a great one, right? But I want to go over to Display Manager. You can see Polished Copper is in the history. So there's actually 3 buttons up here, and I'll go through each one of them here. And there's a third button that's grayed out, and you know, it's a photo view stuff that I'll talk about in a second here. And you can see it's applied to a single part, and it's applied to the entire part. So if I come over here and I go to my appearances, so now I have a task pane appearances, and I have a display manager over here. And it seems like kind of a lot, or you know, in there, and they always seem to sort of be changing how colors and things work every version. I think that they're putting this display manager in there so that that doesn't happen as often anymore. You know, all we're going to do is enhance it. We're not going to, you know, change how you add it or do anything. And remember, all those things are still in there. All these appearance callouts, whoops, you're used to, you can still get in here and apply things to the body or anything like that. If I come back over to here, you know, let's just pick something else. Painted car. We'll make it red or something like that, so we can. There we go. So we notice the change in here, and when I drag and drop that on there, you get this selection where I can do just the body. I can do the face, the feature, the body. In this case, it's all one thing. These 3 here, but we'll just apply it to the body level. And let's do that again. Over here, I'll take the blue one this time, and I'll apply it to the feature. And then I'll come over here, and I'll take the, what's another color I can use? This sienna one. And this time I'll just apply it to the face. And you can see I have this blue applied to the body, the face. And the reason I'm kind of just randomly doing this is if you look over here now in the Display Manager, you can see all the different appearances. And if I click underneath them, you can see, notice the Property Manager icons. This one looks like a face. This one looks like a feature. This one looks like a body. This one looks like a, you know, the entire part icon. So it's telling me a history of how I'm putting it in, and it's an exact order of how I put it in. So really nice way to kind of follow what someone's done to the model, where things are applied. This is a great snapshot of where things are applied on as a whole level. If I want to remove that appearance, and there's 5 things applied to it, so let's go back to this one. And that was sienna. Let's just add that to, another face here, and we'll add it to one more face over here as well. So now I've got a few more faces on the list. You'll notice they show up in there. So I can remove them all at once as well. It's a really nice way to have it. And I can do it in different ways. I can sort this. So it's all the same information, you just sort it differently. If I want to sort it by alphabetical order, if I want to sort it by hierarchy. So remember, faces have the hierarchies. That's why this body's blue, but this face is this. Faces are higher up than features, then bodies, and then parts. So you can see, get an idea of what's going on there. So pretty nice way to sort of organize your appearances in there. Let's go to the next tab here, decals. Now decals are something that some of you who've done some photorealistic rendering or some photo view type stuff know that you can use decals now, and that's kind of like labels or stickers or whatever you want to call it on the part. I do not have, if I go to my add-ins, I do not have the Photo View 360 add-in turned on. I'm going to talk about this add-in in a minute as well, and talk about some changes there. But I can now come over here and I can click this link, it'll take me to it, or I can come over here and just browse to my decals library. And I can take a decal, and there's some in there by default, and these are just, pictures. I can drag and drop that onto a face, and we'll zoom in here. You can see I have my icon kind of changes where I can rotate it a little bit. Let's drop it at about 180. And I can size it. You'll also notice over here there's several different options. I can browse to a different image. I can do things. It supports the masking, or what they call the alpha channel. So if you have some transparency and you have a Photoshop image or one of those graphic artist images that someone makes for your logo with transparency settings, it'll support those settings as well. And this is in the core SolidWorks functionality. It is not something that you need a PhotoWorks in there. So anybody with SolidWorks now in 2011 can do this. There's no add-in required. There's the mapping, and you can see I can adjust the size and everything, and all different kinds of stuff. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. They're pretty self-explanatory on what they are. Maybe I want to fit it to the height to the width, or fit the width to the selection instead, so it fits in there. There's some of those things you might want to do. Maintain the aspect ratio. Illumination, I can actually come in here and change the reflection and stuff on these images depending on how intense it is or how bright it is. I don't know how well these are going to show up on the web, but I'll try and make it real bright. You can see it hopefully changing on the screen there. And have full adjustments in there. It is in the view pull down menu, decals. Just a word of caution here, decals are inserted images basically into the file. They will make the file size grow. They will eventually, if you have some really high-end, high megapixel images or high, large TIFF files or something, it could affect performance a little bit. So don't put decals in just to put them in. Put them in because you're trying to do something that needs a decal in there. You want to show it as a, for a marketing thing or something like that. You can always shut it off. It's a turn on and turn off type thing. So keep that in mind as you're using it. Go back to appearances here. One thing I forgot to mention that's really important in appearances, let's just edit this appearance. Again, I do not, this is the basic appearance now. Actually, let's find one, let's find this red one here, which is right here. I'll edit that appearance. Again, I can sort by history, or I can sort alphabetically, find the gloss red, edit appearance. I want to point this out because this is really cool. The real view appearances were editable, or you could do a lot more if you had Photo View for 360 or PhotoWorks in prior versions. In 2011, you basically have that. Notice I can change the color of the real view. I can go to this advanced button at the top and totally change this thing, change the illumination of it. Whatever specular spread is, I don't know if you can even tell on the web in there what this does. If I adjust these to the extreme, you might see them get a little brighter, a little darker. Whoops. Reflection amount, I can turn that down, dull it, blur it, make it super transparent. There's all kinds of stuff. Again, let's crank it up, see if I can make it real bright. There's my Christmas light, right? I could just type in a number. Let's do like 5 or something. But anyway, you can really go through the mapping of it. You can do the color. You can do, you know, rotation. You can do all kinds of stuff in there that you weren't able to do. And this is still very real view-ish. If I scroll around, I still get those reflections and stuff of the environment and everything else. So a really great, a lot more functionality in here that was mainly something you had to have a higher end package. You had to have the PhotoWorks or PhotoView 360 package to do this type of stuff. Now you can do this with any real view appearances. No extra stuff needed. That takes us over to the scenery, the lights button. So this is where all your lights are going to be now. You'll notice they're all turned on in this particular one. This is where your camera views are going to be now. And this is where you can edit your scenes too. So if I click on Edit Scene, you can see I have the Advanced tab again. I get some rotation. You can't really tell rotation on this one, but if you have one of these like kitchen background ones that you have in here, you can choose some of those. You can choose to have solid colors. You can put your own image in the background. Some of this stuff you could already do, but it's all just sort of grouped over here now instead of figuring out another space or in 5 different spots. So again, I'll let you play with all this stuff. It depends on what type of images, which ones you want to adjust, widths and all that type of stuff in here. But you know, knowing that it's in here and knowing that you can really get your parts to look really crisp and clean and set up kind of nice ways to get screenshots. And remember, SolidWorks has a built-in screen capture from the View pull-down menu, image capture. This is not new. This has been around a while. You can actually record video too. It uses the same thing that the RX does, so it's not the greatest high def or anything, but you can record quite a bit. But you can do some good image captures, which are just screen captures of the screen, the graphics area, not all the toolbar buttons and everything. So if you get it looking pretty nice, you can get something really nice to quickly put in a PowerPoint without, again, I stress, without having PhotoView 360. Now, if you have PhotoView 360, you can do a lot more with it, and that leads me into PhotoView 360 here in general. You'll notice this is turned off here. We'll give you a few more options still, and not so much in the appearances. You actually have the same amount of options in there as you did whether you have SolidWorks Standard or SolidWorks Professional or Premium in there. But the biggest thing about PhotoView 360 is the fact that, let's go ahead and turn it on, is the fact that it's integrated into SolidWorks now. So PhotoWorks no longer exists. 2011 does not have PhotoWorks. It'll open up your files. It'll map all the stuff as best as possible in there. For the most part, I haven't had any problems opening files with PhotoWorks data in them. As far as, I mean, obviously there'd be no problems opening them, but as far as getting the data, the PhotoWorks data part of it. So you know, we'll cross those bridges as we come to it, but it's no longer in there. This is a faster renderer. It avails the ability for more options, and I think there are some other things in the background or some political stuff in the background too for the reasoning. But for the most part, your new inside of SolidWorks renderer is PhotoView 360. PhotoWorks does not exist. It won't be in the add-ins. It won't be there anymore. So hopefully that doesn't upset too many people. You will have to learn the new interface now, and you might be really good at PhotoWorks. But it's all in these tabs. So you know, I can click the PhotoWorks options or PhotoView 360, right? I can't say that anymore. And there's more options in there. We're going to do a whole webcast on a little bit more on the display stuff and actually setting up the appearances and setting stuff up and the PhotoView 360. So look for that later on in the What's New series. But I just want to point this out that it's here. You'll notice it also has, you know, these are shut off in PhotoWorks PhotoView, so I can turn on and off lights. So appearance-wise, they're not any different. So you're actually getting these PhotoView 360 appearance ability, the ability to adjust them without needing PhotoView 360. So that's kind of nice. You can get it looking good. But if you actually want a good high-end final rendering, and you know, here's your rendering tools up here. You know, if you want that high-end final rendering, you're going to need to have a photorealistic PhotoView 360 type thing, and you're going to want to come in here and adjust it and do a lot more. And you can see the, you know, I don't know, again, it's a horrible way to show it is on mine because it's going to be low res here, but So anyway, I just want to point that out. PhotoWorks is no longer there. Photo V360 is the default renderer, and that does have the same thing for here. If you were to, you know, I don't know, create an animation or something real quick, it's fine. If you're going to save out this animation, the default photorealistic renderer for this animation is PhotoView. If you're going to use, actually it's not the default is just the screen capture, but Photo V360 you can render your animations to. And again, we're going to cover options and how to use Photo 360 a little bit more in the What's New series, but it's important to know right away where it is and what happened to PhotoWorks. It's no longer a separate application that runs just on your desktop or installs separately or anything like that. So tightly integrated into SolidWorks now. All right, a couple more just sort of bookkeeping things. I don't see any questions in here. Hopefully I see we have a few more minutes left here. That's most of the fundamentals of SolidWorks, the installation administration. A couple things I want to mention that are just some brand new stuff along the lines of the Photo V360 taking over for PhotoWorks. Is Flow Simulation now has 2 new modules specific for different industries. I think that they found that electronic cooling and HVAC were specific industries that most people, you know, probably 75% or 70% of the people doing flow simulations were in these industries. So they've added more functionality. Actually, they're separate add-ins. They're an additional. You buy flow with these add-ins to them. But for more information on that, you know, go ahead and contact us at Digital Dimensions. Let's jump back over here. You know, Mike Simon, our simulation expert here, has already done some webcasts on that. You know, you can go here to the webcast, you can sort by simulation, and you can come in here and you can see there's a webcast on the What's New. You know, right click, save target as, there's the HVAC one. So if you want a little bit more information, or you're in some of those industries and want to see, and those of you who've checked out Flow years ago and it didn't quite do what you wanted it to do, you know, check it out again, give us a call. It probably does. They've really spent a lot of time enhancing that over the last few versions, and in 2011 there's some major improvements to it, or some major enhancements, let's say, to it. So any interest in that, call Digital Dimensions, shoot an email over, and we'll get you some more information. Here's some bad news for you guys using 3D Instant website. They're going to cancel that. Now, I'm sure most of you in the audience are going, what's 3D Instant website? But it's been around a long time. The functionality will still exist for a while, but they won't be offering the hosting for it anymore. It just wasn't very popular. There wasn't enough people using it. There are better things out there, so they basically will kill all the hosting at the end of this month, at the end of this year. So if you have sites up there or anything on there, you know, make some plans for it to be gone. But the functionality will still be there, so you can still make your sites. You just have to host them locally or use your own hosting stuff, at least for the life cycle of 2011. So probably not a big deal, but definitely worth mentioning. The other one is the 2D editor, SolidWorks DWG, whatever we're supposed to call it now, is now gone, or is not part of the default install. And this is actually a change that started in 2010, so it's not necessarily what's new for 2011, but it was a change implemented after 2010 was released. So we never really covered this in the 2010 releases. I believe it was about Service Pack 2 or 3 that DWG editor, SolidWorks couldn't call it that anymore, and I think there was some legal battles or something, and it just got easier, and they renamed it to SolidWorks 2D editor. And you notice I've crossed that out. Now the 2D editor is still available. You can go to solidworks.com and download it. However, it's not part of the default install anymore. So if you install 2011 and do a full upgrade, you'll probably still have 2010 DWG editor on your system. So you may go to add or remove programs and still see some 2010 stuff in there. It doesn't touch that anymore. It doesn't upgrade that. In fact, it stopped upgrading that about Service Pack 3 or so of 2011. It's not part of the default. It's not on the disks anymore or anything like that. Product still exists. You can still download it. You can see that it's going to be retired at some point if you take the time to read everything. But here's what you really need to know here is DraftSight is now available. DraftSight is something from Dassault Systems that is basically the replacement for both, or this, well, they're the same thing, but the replacement for the 2D editor is DraftSight. It's a free application. You don't need SolidWorks licenses. You don't need to put it on a SolidWorks system. In fact, I might be wrong here, but I think it might even install on a non-Windows system if you're so you can just go to draftsight.com, and I'm on the web showing the web, but you can go to support and look at it. But basically, this is your replacement for 2D or DWG editor type applications. Again, DXF of course too. I like to have, I'm not an AutoCAD guy, I obviously, that goes without saying, but I like to have something just when I export, or something just to do quick edits or something like that. This is a lot more functional of an application than the 2D or DWG editor. When that first started coming out, yeah, it's fine. Oh, I'll activate later. But when it first started coming out, it was something that was pretty good. It was a pretty decent clone. It was sort of an AutoCAD-like clone or something you could call it. Over the years, they didn't really enhance that much. So what we've gotten to is a point where it's now sort of more, it's an AutoCAD extra light type of thing to do the old 2D editor. So DraftSight is the replacement. It has a lot more functionality, has all the same stuff where you could save as different versions, and I definitely recommend, again, it's free. Use it on your non-SolidWorks user systems. The big point, I guess, is don't give Autodesk or AutoCAD any more money if all you're doing is supporting legacy documents, because this will probably take care of most of what you need.